Okay, we will now go to our guests who have been extremely patient to sit through all of this. And before I introduce them, I just want to say that in his message to mark the International Day for Mine Awareness and Assistance in Mine Action, the Secretary General is reflecting on the progress achieved so far to raise awareness of the dangers posed by landmines. More than 160 states are party to the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention, and he calls on those who have not yet acceded to the convention to do so without delay, and also urges the international community to recommit to our target of a mine-free world. Unfortunately, the Secretary General says progress on clearing mines is something rolled back. We cannot be content simply with advocacy and campaigning to create awareness of the dangers posed by landmines, he says. He also says that the UN Charter calls on us to complete the work to survey, clear, and destroy these deadly devices. Let's make this the last decade when we need to devote ourselves to this task, he concludes. And now turn to our guests from the UN Mine Action Service who can expand on this issue. And I welcome Ilene Cohn, the Deputy Director and Officer in charge of UNMAS, Abigail Hartley, the Chief of Policy, Advocacy, Communications, and Resources Mobilization, and Stephen Pritchard, the Chief of Program Planning and Management, also from UNMAS. So Ilene, welcome, and you have the floor.
Thanks very, very much, Stefan. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time. The General Assembly designated April 4th as the International Day for Mine Awareness and Assistance in Mine Action to draw attention to the global campaign to rid the world of landmines. Unfortunately, landmines, explosive remnants of war, and improvised explosive devices continue to cause thousands of casualties, and last year was no exception. We had significant casualties in many countries, including Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia, Syria. In 2020, the United Nations Mine Action Service, UNMAS, delivered programs in 19 countries and territories, which collectively made safe more than 60 square kilometers of land, almost 2,000 square kilometers of road, destroyed some 72,000 explosive remnants of war, landmines, and improvised explosive devices, IEDs. We provided risk education to nearly 2 million people, assisted some 3,000 survivors of explosive accidents, and trained 24,000 healthcare workers, police, teachers, peacekeepers, and national authorities to deal with explosive ordnance and IEDs. Pursuant to the Secretary General's Agenda for Disarmament, UNMAS coordinates a task force on a whole-of-system approach to IEDs, and our IED Threat Mitigation Advisory Team has now established a mobile training team to support regional training centers and bilateral partners to conduct pre-deployment training for UN troop-contributing countries that are deploying to high-threat environments. The UN Mine Action community chose perseverance, partnerships, and progress as our themes of 2021, keeping in mind the need to make progress against the goals that member states have set to eradicate the threat of landmines, employing a multilateral approach in spite of challenging circumstances. And speaking of challenging circumstances, I'd like to thank all our donors for their continuous support and flexibility as we adjusted our programs in the face of the pandemic. So please visit our multimedia digital exhibition on the UN exhibition website. It's up today. It'll feature there for the next 6 weeks, and it includes photos and videos and a lot of background on UN mine action operations underway. There's also an events page with links to all of the different activities taking place around the world this week. And you'll find there also our annual report for 2020, the UNMAS annual report. It's in the digital exhibit. It's also on our website. And now, in closing, I'd like to introduce the global advocate for the elimination of mines and explosive hazards, the actor Daniel Craig. Mr. Craig's a staunch supporter of the UN Mine Action community. He recently helped us launch a Safe Ground initiative in Cambodia, and the UN Mine Action sector thanks him for his advocacy. Thank you, and my colleagues and I look forward to your questions. Back to you, Steph.
Great. So I understand we will play the video now.
Great.
That of the Secretary General of the United Nations and many other leaders and activists and concerned citizens to call on all nations to keep their eye on the end goal of ridding the world of landmines and explosive remnants of war. It takes determination, As we come out of the shadow of this pandemic, I just want to praise the men and women who have steadfastly stuck to their routines and cleared and destroyed hundreds of thousands of explosives in 2020, from landmines to unexploded bombs and improvised explosive devices. And work continued because individuals, organizations, and governments stuck to it. A new safe ground was built in Cambodia. Chile declared its territory mine-free, and all states party to the Mine Convention have declared their intentions to clear their territories of anti-personnel landmines by the end of this decade. But there is new contamination. Last month, sadly, we marked the 10-year anniversary of the war in Syria, a conflict that has led to hundreds of thousands of deaths, millions displaced, and thousands of tons of new explosive contamination. The fighting needs to stop. The clearance needs to begin in earnest and at scale. And there is old contamination. The Vietnam War officially ended more than 45 years ago, but landmines and explosives still contaminate wide swathes of that territory. One landmine can wreck a community, kill a father, a mother, and all too often a child. The vision we must strive to attain is a world where individuals and communities live in safe homes, on safe ground, in safe environments, where human rights, the right to life, liberty, personal security, and basic needs are met, and no one is left behind, including the survivors of explosive ordnance accidents, those wounded and disabled, who must be fully integrated as equal members of their societies. April 4th is the International Day for Mine Awareness and Assistance in Mine Action. Please, please do whatever you can in whatever position you hold to reach this vision. And thank you.
Thank you very much. We're just sorry not to all be in person. I just want to give the floor to Abigail Hartley, Chief of Policy and Advocacy at UNMAS. Abigail?
Thank you, Stefan, and thank you, colleagues, for being present today. Thank you very much. This International Day is particularly important. Not only do we have a responsibility to raise our voices for those conflict-affected people who are not easily heard, but it also does allow us to shine a light on the great work that's been carried out and the complexities of the challenges facing us. So we're really pleased to see so many people taking an interest, not just through this press conference, but thank you to all of you who are tuned in to listen, but also in the Security Council, which, as you may well have heard, next week on the 8th of April, under the presidency of Vietnam, will debate mine action. And UNMAS is really pleased that Vietnam has brought this to the attention of the Council. And our desire is to see mine action increasingly integrated into resolutions, products and discussions across country-specific and thematic agenda items of the Council. On the 16th of April, the United States Congressional Unexploded Ordnance Demining Caucus will host an event which Daniel Craig, who you just saw, obviously, will also deliver a statement. And this event is being supported by the Halo Trust, who is one of UNMAS's close civil society partners, amongst many other mine action contributors. As Ilene mentioned, there are a multitude of awareness-raising events taking place across countries and territories, supported by the UN, running races, radio shows, women deminer round tables. Things are happening in Afghanistan, Iraq, Colombia. And as Ilene mentioned, you can find out about those in the exhibit. But I will say that from a personal perspective, I'm just amazed that in a pandemic year, the commitment and the energy of the sector to go ahead with all of those events is just really, really amazing. So in most of those settings that I'm describing, the UN is working with national partners to develop national capacities so that we can ensure adherence to international standards and the implementation of IHL instruments. Before I turn to my colleague Steve, I do want to use this opportunity to further thank the donors that Ilene alluded to. In 2020, 14 UNMAS programs received a total of $69 million of voluntary contributions. The emphasis on voluntary, and UNMAS is extremely grateful for that. For the 24 donors, that constituted that contribution through the Voluntary Trust Fund for Mine Action. And in particular, I want to thank the top 5 donors to UNMAS, the UK, the US, Germany, the Netherlands, and the European Union. I do want to say that we also benefited from generous in-kind contributions of highly qualified personnel, both in our headquarters and in the field. And of course, assessed and regular budget contributions, which last year were just over $162 million, enabled UNMAS to continue to support peace operations deployed in high-risk environments. You may have heard about this work during the ARIA formula meeting arranged by Kenya on Friday that was widely welcomed, and no doubt you'll hear more about UNMAS operations in peace operations and the contribution that Mine Action makes in the Security Council debate. So with that, I turn to my colleague Steve, who can tell us more about the actual hands and boots on the ground. Over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Abigail. Ladies, gentlemen, and colleagues, my name is Steve Pritchard. I'm the Chief of Programs at the United Nations Mine Action Service. I started my career in mine action as a deminer in northern Mozambique, and today I'm responsible for supporting up to 24 UNMAS programs globally. The work, as already mentioned, involves addressing explosive threats and unsafe arms stockpiles, contributing to peace processes, peace building, relief development, and security. We work in close cooperation and partnership with a range of cherished partners, including governments and regional organizations such as the African Union. We have worked very closely with United Nations partners, for example, the Development Programme and the Children's Fund recently, to conduct an assessment of explosive threats after the recent conflict in South Caucasus region. But most importantly, I'd like to call out our civil society, non-government organisation partners. They are the source of innovation, cost effectiveness, and they work at the coalface around the globe doing dangerous work. So thank you to our NGO partners in particular. I should mention some breakthroughs in the mine action section in the sector in the last few years, starting with Iraq. Iraq has seen a real partnership of organizations in the government to help people in densely populated urban areas to return to socioeconomic normalcy following the conflict in that country. In Colombia, Mine Action has supported the peace process. For example, we have assisted as UNMAS the creation of a civil society organization, Humanitemos, which comprises former combatants from the former conflict. I'm very pleased to announce that they have started clearing landmines, and they actually found their first anti-personnel mine just a few weeks ago. In Bosnia, our United Nations Development Programme colleagues have worked closely with the government to integrate mine action within the Sustainable Development Goals, creating in that country their own Sustainable Development Goal number 18 for mine action. I should conclude by reiterating on the needs of UNMAS and also of our partners globally. In Syria, UNMAS foresees a funding shortfall of $9 million for this year for only prioritized needs. In Iraq and Palestine, people live in densely populated areas in close proximity to explosive threats, which threaten not only civilian populations, but also the government and the United Nations, as it helps the government to return to socioeconomic normalcy. Finally, in the Sahel, people, the government, aid agencies are suffering from explosive threats that recognize no boundaries. Therefore, UNMAS and partners in that region are developing with the relevant governments an approach that is regional and transboundary to address those deadly threats in that area. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Let's see if there's anybody in the room, or if you have a question, just open up your microphone. Toby, did you have a question?
Yes, thanks, Steph, and thank you very much for the briefing. My question is one about communication strategy. Daniel Craig is your new ambassador, it seems, and he's very famous as the James Bond actor, and he works in the tradition of of Princess Diana, who was the most famous woman in the world, I think most famous person in the world at the time, when she had anti-landmines as a personal cause. And I'm wondering if for other disarmament movements, such as anti-nuclear, anti-chemical weapons, what public relations strategies have you found to be most effective in galvanizing public support? Is there any lessons that we can learn from your initiatives that can be applied to other disarmament movements? Thank you.
I don't know which one from UNMAS wants to take a crack at the question. Ilene, if you want.
I think I'll defer. Abigail leads on our outreach,
Okay.
And Lee is there also with you. So maybe Abigail would like to say something about that.
Oh, actually, thank you, Ilene, and thank you, Stefan, and thank you, Toby, for the question all the way back. Actually, I would like to defer it to Lee, who is in the room and has an amazing and enthusiastic way of talking about UNMAS's communication strategy, and I'm sure he would be the best person to answer that question. Lee, over to you.
Thank you very much, Toby, for the question, and I'm very happy to be able to try to answer it. So the whole program that the Department of Global Communication...
We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. My mic is on.
Go ahead.
Now can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Toby, thank you very much for the question, and I am very happy to give a crack at it. So the Department of Global Communications has a robust program around advocates and messengers of peace. And the whole goal behind it, of course, is what this day was designated on behalf of, which is to raise awareness and seek assistance. And so obviously by using well-known people who could be well-known for different things, whether it's music or sport or it's a celebrity acting, it brings more attention to it. So that certainly is a plus. It gets more people to think about an issue. They might listen to it. They might go and seek something out. So obviously in our case, using Daniel Craig, he's been our global advocate since 2015. It has brought a lot of attention to it, so it's been extremely helpful that way. And it brings attention on many ways, not just to a global public, but also even inside of this building in the United Nations, because a lot of people are very interested in wanting to know and listen to him, so that's helpful for us. And even when he comes to these press briefings for us, it also adds some value. So I think it's a great outreach strategy. It, of course, is extremely important that we have someone who is committed, authentically involved with that, and that was something we had with Daniel Craig, which worked out extremely well. He did do some filming at some point in Cambodia and came across landmines and had it in his heart that it was something he would love to work towards. Obviously, just you mentioned Princess Diana. She was extremely important in getting the Anti-Personal Landmine Convention into force, which happened in 1999, and getting enough member states to sign up and take on that issue. So it definitely does help, and we can only say that any cause that there is somebody who could authentically be supporting it, it's a good idea, and we hope that they can come forward. Thank you.
Okay, seeing none, unless somebody has a question, I want to thank our panelists. Thank you, Ilene, and thank you, Ilene, and your team for your patience and coming out today.
Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you. Bye-bye.